There's a farm in Michigan, and I'd like to fish again in the river that flows beside the field.
Black River is located in northeastern Alcona County, just south of the Thunder Bay on Lake Huron. It has a rich history in not only logging, but commercial fishing. Due to the limited number of images available, some images have been added to facilitate a close facsimile to the original way that things were done. Images provided by Ed McCoy, Norma Ludwiczak, the Alcona Historical Society, Wikipedia, the Department of Natural Resources, the Detroit Free Press, and the Bay City Times. Before the Europeans had arrived, the indigenous tribes employed fishing as one of their many ways to gather food. They'd use nets made of vines and weeds, spears, and traps. At night, they would light pine pitch in baskets hanging above their boats and spear fish that came to investigate the light. Some used rocks to construct fish traps, trapping the fish up in the shallows where they could be caught more easily. The fish were then smoked to preserve them or frozen during colder months. In 2000, the Alpena Amberley Ridge was discovered, a land bridge that had connected what is now Michigan to Canada, and after exploration was found to contain evidence of prehistoric hunting camps and a line of rocks used to herd caribou towards these early hunters. That may help explain the mysterious ancient rock walls discovered in Negwagon State Park. They could have been early fish traps used by Aboriginal hunter-gatherers on early Lake Huron, after the glaciers had retreated. Black River's first settler was William Cullings, who in 1849 established a fishery at the mouth of the Black River. He fished the shore from the Saginaw Bay to Mackinac, learning where and when the fish would be at certain times of the year. Other settlers fished, such as Willis Rowe, William Johnson, who had the first framed house in Black River, and Duncan McIntyre. They also fished from the river, netting the abundant lake trout and whitefish in the untouched waters of Lake Huron. That would soon change as Europeans saw what they thought of as an unlimited supply of fish. Commercial fishing was done up and down the shoreline, anywhere there was a safe place from which to launch boats. There is no exact numbers to the early fishing settlements, but they may have numbered in the hundreds along the eastern shoreline of Michigan. Most nets used employed weights on the bottom and floats on the top to keep them stretched out. This would be an impassable wall for the fish to get caught in. Early nets were gill nets, trapping the fish that swam into them by hooking onto their gills when they tried to back out. These nets trapped all the fish that got caught in them, and most died in the net. Some fishermen used seine nets, which were used to surround schools of fish. Seine nets enclosed the fish, herding them into the shallows, while gill nets snare the fish, killing them. Seine nets allowed unwanted fish to survive. Other nets used were called pound or pond nets, due to having to pound a log or stick into the bottom and stretch the net between the posts. These would be arranged in an arrow shape, on one end secured closer to shore and the other in deeper water perpendicular to shore. The fish would encounter the net and turn toward deeper water, being funneled into the pot where they could be pulled up and scooped out. The stakes used were harvested from nearby forests and were 50 to 100 feet long. Tamarack seemed to be the preferred post type. Here is Clarence McCoy of Black River helping to harvest stakes. Here is a pile driver on a barge used to pound the stakes. Because the length of the stakes used determined the depth you could fish, most pound nets were in shallower waters and ran perpendicular to the shore. 2 boats were used to collect the catch. One would row around the net, releasing the tension on it, allowing the men in the larger boat to pull up the pot. Once the pot came toward the surface, bringing the catch with it, they were scooped out and placed on the deck, where it would be sorted and placed into crates or barrels. Once back to shore, the fish were unloaded, cleaned, and arranged in barrels and salted. Later they were packaged in crates, ready for transport to the buyers. The most commonly harvested fish were whitefish, bluefin pike or blue walleye, herring or cisco, lake chubs, lake trout, perch, and mullet or sucker. The fishermen working in Black River from 1934 to the late 1950s, Ed Yar, C.A. Thomas, Clarence Smith, Black River Fish Company, Joseph Rash, Ralph Curl, Ranger Brothers, Roland Slim Lubin, and the McCoys, Roy, Clarence, Elmer, Ralph, and Glenn. Submarine nets, or what are now called trap nets, are similar to pound nets, but they can be fished in much deeper water because they use anchors to hold their shape, and the pot is completely enclosed. These nets were invented in the Thunder Bay by commercial fishermen from Alcona in order to fish deeper water. The McCoys used trap nets out of Black River. They fished 10 to 12 nets from North Point up to False Presqu'île, just north of Rockport, and 10 nets south to Oscoda. Ice was cut from the frozen river in the winter using saws and tongs to retrieve it. The ice was stored in the ice house under sawdust for use in the summer. The ice was put on the fish as soon as they were pulled from the pot in the warmer months to prevent spoilage. 3 fish houses remained the longest. Pictured here is White's that was used by Slim Lubin. You can see nets piled up in the foreground on the Elmer McCoy fish house side of the river. Here is Elmer McCoy at the dock on the south side of the river, across from what is now Alcona Township Park. In this photo, looking east from Lakeshore Drive, White's fish house is on the far left, and on the far right is Elmer McCoy's, and then Roy McCoy's. And if anyone knows what the little thing by the post in the foreground is, please leave that in the comments. Further upstream was Glenn McCoy's. In this photo, from left to right, you can see the Alger House, the fire barn and jail. Way off in the background was the drugstore and the funeral home, and then Glenn McCoy and his fish house. Roy and Ralph McCoy aboard the Alice K entering the Black River about 1939. Notice the pilings left over from the Alger Smith logging dock. The lifting booms for hoisting the pots can be seen standing tall on each side of the boat. Here are the boys in action retrieving a catch. You can see the boom to the left holding the pot. As it's pulled to the surface, it looks like they got a good catch. With boxes full and sorted, it's time to start the trip back to port. Moving at about 5 miles an hour, they hope that the weather stays clear and the wind stays calm. Here we get to see the men doing the actual work.
And this is the old Black River Bridge, and our dock, it was just below it. You can see the ice house on the right on the far side of the bridge, and that's the White House fishery on the right, going out of the mouth of the river. Clarence and your dad are both in the cabin, and I'm laying up on the top, and that is the Jammy, named after Jim McCoy. Your dad is still inside, and that's Roy and Stu. And this is coming up to a net. And there's your dad running back to pick up that with Clarence, pick up the buoy. These were taken in, we were fishing in Thunder Bay. That's Ralph sorting the fish. Judy Barringer. And there's your dad and Clarence. Lunchtime. This is right up at South Point. Coming back in, White House Fisher on the right, and
Harry Gerard and Slim Lubin unloading some of the catch onto the cleaning table. The nets needed quite a bit of attention. They would become damaged usually where they were in contact with the bottom. Rubbing on the bottom from the changing currents caused chafing. They also needed to be cleaned because of algae growth on the twine. In this photo, there's a car engine on the dock that Slim Lubin used to pump high-pressure water for cleaning the nets, an early version of a power washer. Once the nets are clean, they're checked for damage and dried. The McCoys also fished the Saginaw Bay, fishing out of Bay City.
these pictures are again back in Saginaw Bay. And this is the first home color film available, and you can see the colors are bleached out pretty badly. Clarence Pettit is always running the camera, and you'll always see Rudy Oringer at the same time because they were both federal agents and worked out of the federal building in Bay City.
They can be seen here milking walleye for roe and milk to fertilize the eggs, and then the fertilized eggs were taken to the fish hatchery.
There we stripped the pickerel and then would turn the eggs into the hatchery, and then they were replanted. This is Kenny Savage, who was became a business agent in Flint after the war, laborers union, I believe. The eggs were fertilized and then mixed by hand and put into 5-gallon or 25-gallon milk can.
On the south side of Black River Road, as you leave the village, is a broken down building being reclaimed by the forest. This was the box mill owned by Curl. Poplar trees were cut from behind the building and milled into boards. The fishermen would work together in the winters constructing boxes for the fish. This is one thing that they never wanted to run out of. A little known fact about the ponds seen on the north side of Black River Road as you head towards the village: they are fed by artesian wells that can easily be seen from the road. The McCoys and Slim Lubin would keep fish such as carp, sucker, and catfish alive in barrels and then transport them to these ponds. They'd be kept alive, being fed corn to fatten them up until the Jewish holidays. The Jewish would make gefilte fish or ground fish. During these holidays in New York, the price would increase 2 to 4 cents a pound. It was then that they were removed and packed to ship. Pretty slick operation these Black River fishermen had going. In the late 50s, they all retired and quit the fishing business. In the case of the McCoys, a fire at their fish house in Bay City and the decreasing fish numbers probably led to their decision to give up fishing. Unknowingly, they had sidestepped a Great Lakes disaster. Signs of it were already seen by them by the decreasing numbers in their catches, but the boys had literally become burned out. Glenn McCoy's fish house stood until the 80s. It was eventually torn down by Don LaFave, bringing the final closure to the commercial fishing in Black River. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like this type of content. A special thank you to Ed McCoy for the film footage, photos, and information. Thank you to Don and Cochran for all the research that you do to make these videos happen. The disaster that they avoided will be the next video.